Welcome to Beyond the Pulpit with Pastor Tim, practical wisdom for the local church. We are glad you are with us today as we are discussing dress, our wardrobe, what we wear, and what that says about our heart. So, Pastor Tim recently stepped down after 30 years at Victory Church, and over the course of that experience, gained just a wealth of not just scriptural knowledge. All right, we'll debate the wealth of it later.
Yeah,
but gained at least a lot. We'll just call
it gets
that.
me in trouble a lot. That's for sure.
He at least had a lot of experiences that could have brought wisdom. Let's say that.
Okay.
And so with that, he's been beginning to post articles to his Facebook page that have been getting a lot of traction. I don't know if we would say they've gone viral or how you'd want to describe it, but seeing a lot of interaction, a lot of questions, a lot of pushback on some of them. And as a result of that, we wanted to begin looking at those in greater detail. And we're going to start with that first article that he released.
I feel like an old man howling at the moon.
maybe a little bit. Maybe a
At least
little
I'm
bit.
dressed well, right?
You look great. You look great. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that article when Come As You Are has gone to your head?
Well, one of the reasons that I wrote the article, the Lord woke me up like 4:00 in the morning and impressed this upon me. I mean, even the title was a little catchy, and I knew it was of the Lord. And so I got up and started writing. But I guess in all honesty, it had to do with a funeral I had attended the day before, and I was in the receiving line, and there was a woman there that was dressed. It looked to me like she was dressed in pajamas. We were there to give honor and respect to this man who had died and try to comfort the families. And I even said that to my wife. I said, "Does this lady have pajamas on?" And she said, "No, I don't think it's pajamas." I said, "Well, it just looks like she's missing the house shoes to me." But anyway, in all fairness, that's kind of how this all began. But it's really not about ties, and it's not about suits. It's not about, women wearing hats. It's about something a whole lot bigger. It's about respect, honoring God, having a degree of common sense and etiquette. So that's kind of how this began. It just came to me. I started writing it, and I thought I would get a lot more pushback than what I did. It's kind of amazing that a lot of the older people reached out to me, and they're like, "You're exactly right. This has gotten out of hand. People are dressing inappropriately as Christians."
Mm. So talk about that for a second. And there's some major points I want to get to in the article, but in particular, the article is not addressing or not alone addressing how we dress when we go to church, but it's
Right.
It's about how we dress just in the everyday practical occasions of our lives. And so thinking about that, I think some folks can misplace what the intention of the article is. It's not merely to address how we're dressing when we go to the house of the Lord, but how we're representing Christ day in and day out. And so share a little bit about that aspect in particular to help address the practical reality of that.
Well, there's a lot of times in our lives where we need to dress according to the moment. It seems like people go to their closet today and they're like, "What's going to make me feel good?
Oh, yeah.
What do I feel like wearing?" And they never consider the moment. They never consider the people that they're going to be around, or do they consider the occasion? I think that we need to, when we're dressing, we need to dress not only age appropriate, as we were talking here the other day, but also we need to dress according to the occasion. When you're going to church, when you're going to a funeral, when you're going to a birthday party, when you're going to a family gathering, when you're going to the gym, I think that you ought to dress age appropriately.
Right.
We have way too many older women going to the gym trying to dress like teeny boppers. Okay, we just don't want to see that.
No, those are things you don't want to see.
No, you just don't want to see that. So I want to just call people's attention to when you go to the closet and you're picking something to wear, that it's not all about you.
Yeah.
It's just not all about you.
Yeah. One time I was going to an event with one of the members of the church that I pastor, and it was kind of a casual Saturday event. And so I didn't think a whole lot about what I was putting on. And the jeans that I put on that morning had holes in the knees. And I'm there with him, and he's introducing me
those
to
are expensive jeans nowadays.
Yeah, right. These were naturally worn holes. But he's introducing me to a friend of his, and he points out that I have holes in my knees. He's introducing me as his pastor, and I felt terrible immediately. And the brother covered for me so well, and he just said, "Well, that's because he spends a lot of time on his knees in prayer to the Lord." And I thought, well done, well done.
Did he see calluses there too?
Right. But you're right. We should consider how we're dressing, not just in the church house, but every day when we're getting dressed and we're putting on what we're going to be wearing as we represent Christ.
Right. You represent your home. You represent your family. You represent your church. You represent who you are as an individual. I think that book, Dress for Success, that older book that was written, I think it's still relevant and still very important. There are moments in your life where you ought to consider your appearance and how you look. Of course, if you're going to the auto parts store, you don't have to go in a three-piece suit. That's not what I'm saying here. Yeah.
So let's look at the article a little bit. You mentioned even the title was something that really kind of was impressed upon you. In particular, I think what you're addressing by that is the reality that this come as you are mindset, attitude, that was kind of a slogan introduced back maybe the mid-90s, early 2000s, that it's really been redefined. So how has that been redefined, especially in churchianity as we know it today?
Well, back in the day, when somebody said, come as you are, they were implying, come to Christ as you are. Come as a sinner. Come lost. Come needing grace. Come needing forgiveness. If you're an addict, come as an addict. If you need your marriage fixed, if you're broken, whatever your circumstance or situation, bring it to Christ. Just come as you are. It corresponded with the invitational song that we've sang hundreds of times at the end of the gospel. Just as I am. I mean, that's what we're implying. Come as you are. But this has changed drastically to mean something entirely different. I remember back in the 70s when I was a young boy. I'm not going to say I'm old. Okay, you've already called me old in the past, but I'm just a little old. You're too young to remember the hippie movement of the 60s. But there were two young ladies of our church, and they had brought some boys that they had met. And they came to church and they had long hair. Their clothes looked dirty, ripped, torn. One of them was barefoot. The other one, I think, had sandals on. And the church, we didn't disrespect them in any way. I mean, I think perhaps they had heard that song. There was an older song back in that day, signs, everywhere signs. And one of the verses was about going into church and letting your hair down and freaking the preacher out. But anyway, I mean, we looked at them and we loved them. The gospel was preached to them. One of them got saved, become a preacher. The other one became a gospel singer. But after they got saved, they put their shoes on. Yeah, they cleaned their act up. I mean, when somebody came in like that to church back in the 70s, our mindset was, okay, here's a person that just needs to be saved. Yeah. They need the Lord. The world has gotten them, and the devil is working in their lives, and they need to hear what we have.
Yeah. And culture has really hijacked that. And instead of desiring to take the gospel to those who are without, now it is we are taking the culture in, thinking that that's going to be how we're able to go to those that are without, rather than bringing them into the church, right? And that becoming a new culture as they become a new creature. And so instead, we've really let culture hijack not just the terminology, but the entire idea that it originally suggested.
I've never been in a church that would turn anybody away. I remember just a few years ago, there was a man that came in, he was dirty and he said he needed help, and he came to the altar and he was praying and crying out to God, and he was leaving a great big old stain on the altar. But we didn't care. We just all gathered around him. And afterwards, I just told the cleaning ladies, just get some spot removers, remove that spot. It's no big deal. Yeah. Right. I've never been a member of a church that would turn somebody away because of the way they were dressed.
Yeah.
Never have.
Yeah.
Never have.
Nor should we.
Yeah.
So the issue then that you address in the article regarding this, again, both within and without of the church, that the real issue comes down to honor and not
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah.
And so elaborate on that about what it is that clothing communicates about our hearts and how we show up before others.
Well, it communicates a lot. The same God that looks on the heart told Israel, when their priests come into the presence of God, to wear a particular attire, to come before him and show respect. They had to dress appropriately. And of course, there were other things, other instructions regarding the tabernacle and the priesthood. But God deserves reverence and respect. And I think we can show that in our appearance and in what we wear, and show what's on the inside of us.
Right. Yeah.
And that is reflected outwardly many times with our appearance. The outward part of us is connected to the inward part of us.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me, I was in Israel about a month ago, and we went to the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, like you see on TV,
And
where all
you
the
wore a
Jewish.
hat, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, you had to wear a covering. But the reason why they go to that place, and it's so significant in the Jewish belief, is that they believe that's where God's presence is, that they've got to make their way as close as they can get to the holies of holies. And so as a result of that, they think that God only hears prayers that make their way to the holies of holies and go up. But we know that God's
Yeah.
spirit is with us.
Right.
And so as a result, we don't have to worry about a location, but
No.
rather that we can reach him in our hearts wherever we're at. If that is the case, then we should dress as though
Absolutely.
the presence of God is upon us,
Yeah.
right? And so I think there's a correlation there.
I agree. Our clothes don't determine our spirituality, but they do reveal that this is a priority in our lives.
Yep.
Like when you went to the Wailing Wall, okay, there was a dress requirement. You were going there to show respect, even though you're a Gentile.
Yeah.
You
Right.
still had to wear a hat. When I was there, I bought something to wear, and I remember one of the guys that was, Len Stapleton. I don't mind using his name. I've got a picture of him, and he wore this hat, and he looked like, rather than going to the Wailing Wall, he was going to fish for walleye. He had like a fishing hat on. But anyway, I joked with him quite a bit about that.
I like it. So, that's a significant event, and especially in the Jewish faith. But thinking about those moments that deserve that intentionality about how we dress, that are distinguished moments, right? There's one thing, like you said, going to the auto parts store, you're running errands, you're going to the grocery store, car wash, whatever you're doing. But those moments that deserve our highest respect. You mentioned a funeral already, but what are some of those? What do they look like? And what does it say about how we show up to those relative, not just to that reverence before God, but how we honor?
Well, even if you're going to a wedding, or you're going to a party of some kind, or you're a guest at somebody's house, it matters. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to go dirty. You certainly wouldn't want to go with your hair sticking straight up, or grease on your hands. Moments matter. If you came to my house like that, I mean, I would certainly feed you, but I would think, well, man, he didn't appreciate my invitation to come and fellowship with me. And so even in our fellowships, our family gatherings, things of that nature, they speak to something. They speak to our intention, okay? Whether this is important, whether this is a priority, whether you consider this an honorable thing, and it's reflected in our appearance, it's reflected in our dress.
Yeah, that's a really, really powerful point about our intentions, what it says, how we feel about that, and how we're honoring that moment. So that ultimately gets to the point that our outward choices of how we dress are in fact reflective of those internal attitudes. So I think this is where the cultural piece comes up. And so I know when I have observed and heard others talk about, especially ladies and how they're dressing, and there becomes this point of blame, well, I shouldn't have to restrict how I dress because of how someone else is going to look at me. And culture's kind of allowed that as a pseudo, you can't judge me type of thing. But the reality is that the New Testament scriptures say a lot about what our outward choices are reflecting. And so can you speak about kind of what we see from a scriptural vantage point?
Well, that's just it. I don't think people are reading their Bibles.
Yeah.
I don't think that I really don't.
Right.
I mean, Christians used to go to the scriptures and they would read something and they say, hey, man, I need to change my ways. I need to do better. And people today are disregarding the scriptures. Now, I realize there's a cultural relevance written within the pages of scripture. But even within that cultural relevance, there's a principle that still has to exist in our lives. And there's a lot of passages in the New Testament that speak to our appearance, honoring or dishonoring our head. You look like in the 11th chapter of 1 Corinthians, and it speaks to that. Don't you know that the head of the man is Christ? Don't you know that the head of the woman is the man? Don't you know that the head of Christ is God? And then he goes into our appearance, how that our appearance can dishonor our heads.
Yes.
Now, I realize that women don't wear head coverings, but it does talk about in the 11th chapter, dressing in a way, or in that culture, not wearing a head covering was dishonoring your head. It even speaks to a man's appearance, how that he can dishonor his head. I mean, it's just in the Bible. And then there's other places, Titus chapter 2, there's like 7 things that the older women are to teach the younger women. And one of them is to be chaste. And chaste many times has reference to your appearance. And then you go over to Peter, like in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 5. And there it talks about in old times, the women, the women dressed a certain way, these holy women, and they were adorned a certain way. And through their adorning, they were identified as godly.
Yeah.
Okay, that's how that looked in the Old Testament. We are instructed in the New Testament that principle is still to exist in the church. I guess the question is, what does that look like today? What does that look like?
Right. And it can be hard to identify.
Is it getting out of hand? I don't think people are trying. Okay, so back in your mind and your heart, as a woman or a man, there must be that principle. I've got to fulfill the principle of Scripture, where that my appearance reflects godliness. Let me ask you, how are you going to instruct your daughter to do that? Now, I remember back in the day when your wife, was a young teenager and they went shopping, and Ange came and said, look, there's nothing that's appropriate for a young godly woman to wear. And I said, well, I don't care what it takes. Okay. Some of that stuff she's just not wearing. It's too revealing. And I remember my wife said, well, I'm going to have to take her to dealers, and this is going to cost you. I said, okay. I said, well,
whatever. Pay a premium for honoring clothes.
You do. You do. I wish she would have went to Goodwill instead of Dillard's. I'm sure she could have found something there.
Yeah. Well, it's an important point, because while defining what godliness looks like in our culture today can be difficult, it's real easy to tell what godliness doesn't look like. And, so as a result, when I think about, taking my 13-year-old shopping, for example, or her getting dressed on a random Tuesday to go to soccer practice, or if she's wearing a dress to go out with a friend, or whatever the circumstances are, there's a lot of times where it's, hey, you have to put a pair of shorts on underneath those, or you have to put pants on underneath that dress to be able to wear it to church, or, whatever those circumstances are. And again, I don't know if I can always put my thumb exactly on this is what godliness looks like.
But you brought up a good point.
You see what
a very good point. You know what it's not, right?
Right. Exactly. Right.
I mean, your young daughter comes out of the bedroom, and you're like, okay, no.
Exactly.
That is not what you're wearing. Get back in there and find something different. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So one last point from the article in particular, and then I want to take you through a series of kind of rapid fire questions. But, one thing that I thought the article did a good job of bringing together was the idea of how grace and honor are really united in what they are showing, right? And so it's not legalistic dress codes, but
No, it's not
instead it's
about
a
denim.
true grace that is
Yeah.
welcoming, right? Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. It's more than just your appearance. It's about respect, honor. It's about not being careless. It's
Mm,
about grace.
yeah.
We are to adorn the doctrines of God. And, even in that second chapter of Titus, where it talks about how the older women should teach the younger women how to behave and live and et cetera. And then the older men teach the younger men, et cetera. And then before the chapter concludes, it says that by all these things, by our behavior, by our appearance, by all these things, we adorn. That means to
Mm,
wear, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay. We dress the doctrines of God.
Right.
Okay. You probably would interpret that by our behavior, we adorn, we dress up the doctrines of God. Um, when I was growing up, we always tried to wear our Sunday best. Okay, that's a phrase that's not used today.
Yeah.
I think you hear more about cross dressing than you do about your Sunday best. But I certainly believe the Bible teaches us to dress according to our gender. Don't you?
hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
We need to teach our kids this. Men ought to be men, women ought to be women, and we ought to dress accordingly.
No, and that's an important point. And one of the things that you've mentioned now a couple of times are the principles that we see in the scriptures that though we can try to whitewash the scriptures because of the cultural moment that the scriptures were addressed in and say, well, that doesn't apply to us today. And perhaps it doesn't in the legalistic term, but the principles that we can draw from them certainly do. They are certainly timeless
They're there.
in how
Yeah.
we should apply them.
And they
And
have to
so
be lived out in every culture,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Somehow,
Uh,
some way. Usually when I'm speaking with young couples that are going to get married, and I go to do a premarital counseling thing, I talk about the husband as head of the wife, even as Christ is head of the church, like it says in Ephesians chapter 5. And I said, look, I don't know if you know what this looks like yet, but somewhere in your marriage, you've got to look back on your life and your marriage and say, okay, well, right here, I recognized my husband as the head.
yeah. Mm,
And, so it may vary in different cultures, but still the principle has to be applied
right.
to Christianity. It's in the Bible.
Right.
We can't get around it.
That's a really good point. No, that
Um,
carries significant weight in terms of how we apply that,
yeah.
right?
And your
That there
children
must be a
see
time.
that. Your children
Mm,
see that in your marriage. It's what gives them a good foundation for their own marriage
right.
and their own home
Mm,
and their own Christian life. If kids don't sense any difference in going to church than going to Walmart, eventually they won't feel like it's any different. And so I think preparation, we
mm,
used to make preparation for the moment, instills values, and our children need to learn these values. They really do. And when you go there and you're making all these preparations, you're telling your kids, this place matters.
yep.
Matters. It's different than just throwing a hat on and some tennis shoes and taking a run to Walmart. No, we're going to the house of God.
Yeah.
These defining moments in our lives is reflecting in our preparation to go there and be in that moment.
It's that more is caught than taught principle follows in how
Amen.
we're showing up.
Yeah.
So thinking about that in particular, and especially dressing probably primarily young girls, maybe young boys as well, but when they're going through puberty, and I hope my daughter doesn't listen to this because she will know that I was talking about her and be terribly embarrassed. But, one thing that I see her struggling with or having to adapt to is as her body is changing,
Mhm.
not sure what to do about it. And as a
Yeah.
result, she's actually wanting to somehow dress in a way to hide, right, that her body's changing. What does that mean? That means that oftentimes it's clothes that might be nearer to a boy, right, than to a girl. And certainly we know from the statistics and what's happened over the last 5 years regarding the transgender movement and those sorts of things and how it has become a social contagion at that age. I think that has something to do with it. So while we're kind of on the subject here of marriage, the subject of families,
How did
what's
we
some
get here?
practical? I don't know, but I'm glad we did because I need to hear this if nobody else
I don't
does.
know how we got this. I knew you were the one to give pushback on stuff. Yeah.
Well, what's some practical wisdom though in addressing that, right? Because that's one of those issues of dress that maybe we don't think about as readily, but it's an important stage of life that's going to shape how they go on, right? In terms of how they treat, how they dress throughout all occasions. So what's some practical wisdom to share for kind of parents as they're shepherding their children through that age, but also just for us as we as a society are seeing that more and more?
We've got to buckle down on this
Mm,
issue and address it head on.
yeah.
I know a lot of people have trouble with girls wearing dresses and things of that nature. A lot of the women don't wear dresses to church anymore. Used to, okay. The only people that didn't wear a dress was somebody that needed to be saved. I
Mm,
mean, that's the way the church used to be. And it wasn't pharisaical,
mm,
okay? It was being dressed according to your gender. Men wearing ties and things of that nature is something that men did to dress according to their gender. And somehow the culture has really impacted Christianity to
mm,
where that there's I don't call it cross dressing, um, but in our society, when you go to the mall and you try to buy something, okay, it's right in your face. You see it from time to time, even women wearing ties.
yeah.
I mean, you've seen that.
Yep.
So I think it's really important for older women to teach the younger women that they need to dress like young ladies.
Yeah.
And the older men ought to teach the younger men to dress like young men. And you got to kind of buckle down on that. Um, that church, I think I sent you a video of it. It's a Baptist church up in Kentucky,
Mm,
and we've listened to some of their services and stuff. But did you notice that
yeah.
every boy in there from 2 years old to 80 years old had a tie and a jacket on?
Yeah. No, they sure did.
Now,
And
they were
you
probably
saw they're
fundamental
proud
Baptists.
to
I
be.
get that. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, everybody there and every woman that
Yeah.
was that was at least singing in the choir or involved in the service, every
Right.
one of them had a dress on.
Yeah.
Now,
And those boys weren't like trying to tear out of their suits either.
no,
They embraced it.
yeah. Now, of course, the missionary Baptists, we've gotten pretty loose about stuff like that, almost too loose, in
Yeah,
my estimation.
that's
Um,
true.
I mean, the older generation, I'm not sure when it all started. Um, you'll never find Brother Moran in a pair of jeans at church,
No. Or at
right?
Walmart.
Or at Walmart, probably, as far as that goes. Okay. He really liked my article. I saw him at an ordination service, and yeah, he's like, man, that was right on. And he said that was just, man, that's needed real bad. And but the older generation, even when I came to Victory, I wore a tie. I mean, I started preaching 45 years ago, and um, over 45 years ago. Wow. I mean, there were times I couldn't afford anything real nice, but I would go to Goodwill, or I would find an estate sale. Somebody died and had some jackets that fit me and ties that fit me. And there was a place up in Walnut. Was it Walnut Grove? Oak Grove, Open Oak Grove, up somewhere near Portland, and they sold seconds. And sometimes you would have one sleeve longer than the other, but I mean, it was cheap. I
Yeah.
mean, you can do it. It's not like you can't do it. You can't afford it. Everybody can afford it. I don't buy that. You just can't maybe afford something new. There's yard sales. You can find this stuff. I got a sack of
Oh, yeah.
ties in there from a dead man in my
Sure.
in my bedroom right now.
Yeah.
Somebody gave me. But
Yeah. No, that's a good point. It's it's not that there's not a way. It's that we're unwilling to take the steps that's necessary to be able to do it. So with that in mind, and you mentioned in particular missionary Baptist churches that have gotten loose on this, and we won't assign details on that, but I think there can at least be acknowledgement, however right, wrong, and different you think that is. There must be acknowledgement that we've gotten loose on this. And so with that in mind, let me fire just some rapid fire questions at you here to maybe help shape us a little bit, to tighten us back up here.
I don't know if my son-in-law would be doing this.
Let's go.
He's like, payback.
That's right. That's right. Must I wear a suit every Sunday?
No. But I mean, you may have a conviction that that's what you need to wear every Sunday. And there's some older people that have that conviction. If you don't feel like that's something that you need to do, that's fine.
What about jeans in church?
Oh, boy, man. I knew this one was going to come up. I mean, you can wear them on Wednesday nights to the prayer meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that your jeans. I mean, if that's your Sunday best, go for it. Yes, absolutely. That's your Sunday best. Wear it. If overalls are, is your Sunday best, wear those overalls. That's fine. But I mean, you need to prepare not only your heart, but your whole mind and your body and your spirit to go to the house of God.
One of the better frames that I have heard for this is that Sunday best should mean that you dress better for how you go to the church house than you do to work. Now, if that means that, you're wearing overalls to work, well, maybe you find, a better set of khakis, right, to wear to church or whatever that means.
Yeah. I remember helping in a revival years ago, and I know you're trying to do rapid fire, and I'm not letting you do it.
That's all right. It's all right.
A church back years ago out west. I won't say what state it is. You'll figure it out too quick. But I was helping in a revival, and during the day we had lunch with people at work, and we went to their work, and they were there in 3-piece suits and dressed to the hilt, and they were professionals and very dignified. And then Sunday night during the revival, they'd come to church in jeans and a T-shirt. These same people. I know what they were trying to. They didn't want to look like a modern church. Something got in their minds and their hearts. Okay, we don't want to look like First Baptist, or we don't want to look like this church or that church. And they wanted to look different. Looking different meant coming to church and dressing down. And I didn't know how to handle that. I was pastoring a church at the time that the older women would notice if my shoes were tied at an angle and weren't tied in the middle. Okay. Now, this is the kind of church I was the pastor of. And then I went and helped this revival at this other church. I mean, some of it is cultural. I realize that if you're going to church in Alaska, and I've preached revivals in Alaska, okay, it's different.
Sure.
10 below zero and 3 feet of snow out there. I mean, you're not going to dress the same way going to church as you would here in Tennessee.
Right.
Yeah.
So what about flip-flops on a guy at a wedding?
Only if it's on the beach.
Fair advice. What about pajamas at church?
Well, if don't
act like you're going to pause on that question.
I suppose if there's a fire down at the church and you're jumping out of bed to go to church to put out the fire, it would be okay.
I like it. All right. So kind of wrapping up here, leave us with some closing thoughts. Again, knowing that the purpose of this is really to try to offer some practical wisdom for the local church. What's your closing thoughts on how we address, I think, what is a critical topic for us here?
Well, I believe grace welcomes everyone. My mom's stepsister, she one time said, well, I don't have the right clothes to wear. And my mom's like, it don't matter what you wear. You need to hear the gospel. Just come as you are. And we still believe that today. And we shouldn't confuse acceptance with indifference. Grace welcomes everyone. Your clothes don't save you.
Yeah.
Your clothes don't make you righteous. Your clothes don't make you more spiritual. But your preparation for those important moments in your life, tell people what you think, what's important. And So I think the better question is, when you go someplace, you ask yourself the question, what does this moment deserve?
Yep. Amen.
What does this moment deserve? If I dress this way, will it dishonor somebody? Will it dishonor my head? Would it dishonor my family? Does it dishonor my church? What does this moment deserve? Ask yourself that question when you stand in your closet, rather than, what do I feel like wearing?
Yep. Great advice. Great advice. That's the practical wisdom that you'll find here on Beyond the Pulpit with Pastor Tim. So, Pastor Tim, we thank you, and we invite all of you to join us next time.
I knew you'd give me the pushback I needed.
You've got it. Thanks, Pastor Tim. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.